Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Griecco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And today we're going to be discussing Ravnica Allegiance, the upcoming Magic the Gathering set, which means I am joined, as always, by our Magic expert, Kyle Moran.
Hello, everyone.
Howdy. This set looks so good.
Oh my god, dude! It's like I don't know. When Return to Ravnica came out, or well, I guess Return to Ravnica came out, I was like, man, they really knocked it out of the park with this one. But now I'm looking at this set, and I'm like, have they outdone themselves? Is this really possible? Is Standard really, really good again? Am I going to enjoy myself?
I know. For 2 seasons in a row.
Or this is too good for too long. Something's got to go wrong. Like, where's the Splinter Twin? Where's the Ulamogs on turn 4? It's got to happen, right?
I mean, there are definitely things that are dangerous, but I don't think they're going to ruin everything.
No, I totally agree. The stuff seems very powerful, but very balanced, where there's nothing that just, runs away and takes over the form. Every piece of power, you're paying a real cost in order to actually use that power. So I'm totally with you.
Yeah, so I think to start this off, let's just go ahead and let's go over the new guilds that have been added. Let's go over the new mechanics, and then we're going to go from mechanics to talking about limited and how that kind of plays out. Then we're going to go to specific cards and kind of where we think cards will play in standard or modern, cards that we think are underrated, overrated, properly rated, and, highly rated, that sort of stuff. So to get started, well, actually, it's been a bit. How's your Magic career going?
It's been going well. It's been going well. I've actually started getting myself into actually getting into Modern. It feels like everyone and their mom plays Modern now. So, and I was able to take down the IQ in Danbury last week. So,
nice.
Going to go to the Invitational this June. Should be fun. Haven't done that before.
Is that Modern?
It is Modern. It is Modern.
Are you still playing Jeskai Control?
I am not. Well, I'm playing blue-white control. So pretty. Okay. It's basically the very close cousin of Jeskai Control. However, the card Terminus is in my opinion, is very good right now, and so is Rest in Peace. I played, at least at the IQ, I played against Arclight 4 different times, and never once was it close because you have 4 copies of Path to Exile, 4 copies of Terminus, and copies of Rest in Peace in your sideboard. So they kind of just get bodied.
Well, yeah, I would say that blue-white is for the Jeskai player who likes to watch paint dry.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're cool with your opponent dying of natural causes instead of the damage you dealt them, then play blue-white. But if you want to, get a sandwich between rounds or something like that, play Jeskai.
Hey, you can look at it another way. If you really enjoy playing Magic, blue-white control lets you play a lot of Magic.
Yes.
You get to play the most turns of Magic the Gathering. And everyone says Modern's a turn 4 format, a turn 5 format, whatever it be. No, it's not. If you don't play this deck, it is. It's a turn 20 format if you play this deck.
Yes, we are going to play Magic, and you are trapped in here with me, and you're going to play Magic.
And it's I'm going to make it so it's not you can't just concede, because your chances of winning aren't actually zero.
Exactly. Have you ever seen the episode? Have you ever watched the show King of the Hill?
Oh yeah, no, it's great.
Did you ever see the episode where Bobby starts smoking?
Oh no, I didn't.
So he smokes a cigarette. His dad catches him smoking a cigarette, and he says, "Hey Bobby, you think you like smoking, huh? Well, we're going to teach you how. We're going to see how much you like smoking." And then he gives him a carton of cigarettes and says, "You're going to finish this today."
Oh.
And that's what playing against blue-white is. You're like, "Oh, you like Magic the Gathering, huh? You want to play a lot of it?"
Oh, you're sign me up, man. I love it though, because it's when I'm sitting over there, I'm brainstorming, I'm drawing with Teferi, I'm getting all my counter spells set up. It's like I get to have all the fun, and my opponents get to have none of it. It's the best deck ever, and you get to cheese people out too, because sometimes you're getting beaten down, you're really behind, then you look at the top of your deck, hey, look, 1 mana board wipe, woo!
Awesome. So let's get into Ravnica Allegiance.
Yes.
The new guilds that are being added are the Black-White Guild of Orzhov, the White-Blue Guild of Azorius, the Azorius Conclave?
Senate.
Azorius Senate. The Simic are green-blue. the green-red Gruul, and then the red-black Rakdos are the guilds that are going to be added by this set. Each of them kind of have their own flavor. You've got the Orzhov, who are kind of like a corrupt religious organization. Think like early like Christianity when the Pope was just like on the take.
Yeah.
But like way worse.
Yeah, like way worse.
But with ghosties. Lots of ghosts and afterlife and taxes.
Mm-hmm.
The Azorius Senate, they've traditionally been kind of a controlling. They are basically the law of Ravnica. They've traditionally been a lot of counterspells, a lot of removal, a lot of permission sort of stuff. This set, they seem to be a lot more focused on tempo, a lot more flyers.
I think they had that was out of necessity, because if they did that again with Azorius, then I think our friend Teferi would just kind of bring a stranglehold over the format. So
yeah.
It's kind of unfortunate, but hey, like if Azorius gets to try new things, that's okay.
Yeah, the Flyers thing has always been an element. I would say that the Blue-White Skies element of Azorius has been the downplayed one in the past. Now it's more accentuated.
Exactly.
Then Simic, they are green-blue. They are biomancers. They make weird, wacky hybrids is generally their thing, and they tend to play big, giant idiots and make them bigger.
Yeah, and they usually have something with +1/+1 counters incorporated in their mechanic in some way, shape, or form. Yep. And this time it's adapt, but we'll get to that later.
Yep, and then you've got the Gruul, who are just, they're wild clans, and they generally just smash things.
Yeah,
they loudly smash things.
They like hitting things very hard, very big, very hard.
Yeah, they are the most straightforward, I think, of all of the guilds.
Oh, yeah. Very good. I used to be a Gruul player way back in my day, but then I started casting counterspells, and there was just really no going back. So it's a good starting guild, in my opinion.
Yep. And then there's the Rakdos, who I love what they've done with Rakdos' flavor, because when they started, Rakdos was just kind of like this. They were just hedonists, just destructive hedonists with there wasn't a lot of flash to it. They were just like scary and bad, but kind of fun in a fun way. Yeah. Like the card I think that captured them in the first iteration was Wrecking Ball. It was literally like a party where they were throwing a gigantic ball, destroying things. But in this current set, they finally kind of nailed it. Now they're like a traveling circus of mayhem.
Oh yeah, they're like the circus that you go and you're like, oh my god, what have I done?
Oh no, I'm in the circus now, and they shut the doors.
Yeah,
and they're throwing the knives into the crowd.
Yeah, it's like a mix of it's like cheap entertainment with Saw thrown in there.
Yeah, so
actually, it's not cheap entertainment. This is crazy entertainment, man.
And they are a very aggressive red-black guild, so they tend to do a lot of stealing your stuff and sacrificing it, or just running headlong into you with little regard for themselves. They're a weird guild. They're fun. I have enjoyed playing Rakdos in the past.
Yeah, they have some pretty strong cards coming up, too. Not gonna lie.
So the mechanical identities. Orzhov, like we said, they're these kind of ghosts and kind of this religious sect. So they have this mechanic called Afterlife. Kyle, why don't you explain Afterlife?
Yeah, so Afterlife it's only on creatures. And it's when that creature dies, you'll get a certain amount of spirit, 1/1 white and black spirit tokens with flying. And the way you know that is they put the number right next to it. So, for example, the premier mythic of the Orzhov guild this time around is Angel of Scales, which is a 4-mana 4/3 flying, and you can pay 1 to give it Vigilance or Death Touch, and it's Afterlife 2. So when it dies, you'll get 2 1/1 white-black spirit tokens. And so this lets you play. They have a very strong sacrifice theme that goes throughout their guild, too, so it plays well with that. And it's also just pretty strong getting flyers.
Yep. So basically, their mode of play is either sacrificing their own things to just, get value. You get the value of whatever you sacrificed for, and then you also get a body left behind, and that body's evasive, so it's useful. Mm-hmm. But also they've got kind of an aggressive tilt because you can swing with these creatures, and you don't care if they live or die.
Yeah, they're also, the evasive nature, too. Being 1/1 flyers, they're perfect, really. You can use them as aggressive tools to push through damage, but they're also 1/1, so they're very expendable. So exactly. I really it hits all the flavor. If
you stop the original body, by the time you've stopped the original body, the 1/1s are now relevant to finish you off.
Exactly.
So I like that there's kind of these dual elements in each of the guilds. And so the Orzhov, that's what you kind of get. And a lot of their stuff is very removal heavy. They've got a lot of just kind of long-term grind. Not as much as the Gruul, as the Golgari did in original Ravnica or the Dimir, but they've got a little bit of that going on as well.
Yeah. I'd say it's a little more taxing too. Like you're like, especially with cards like Tide Taker or just like with Grasping Thrill, just like things that like take a little bit of your life, take a little bit of your mana, just like taking a little, like chipping your resources little by little.
Yeah, they tend to be the long-term bleed guild.
Mm-hmm.
So the Azorius, what is their mechanic?
Theirs is Addendum. So it's all Addendum cards are instants or they have flash, so you can cast them whenever you want. However, if you cast the cards with Addendum on your main phase, you get some other benefit on top of that. So the best example I'd say is the rare Precognitive Perception. So it's 5 mana, instant, draw 3 cards. So that's pretty good. Jason's Ingenuity, good card, played in Control X and Standard before, awesome. But if you cast it during your main phase, you also get the Scry 3 before you draw the 3 cards. So a really real upside on top of that. So it's a really good play because usually instants you just want to save it to your opponent's end step, but these kind of instants, or cards with flash in some cases, make you think, wait, what's the best time to time this? Because there's not always a clear answer to that.
Yeah, it basically gives extra flexibility to these cards that already were very flexible. But instead of incentivizing you to play them at the last possible second, it asks you, hey, maybe if you commit, you will get just a better value, and it's worth it.
Yeah, but not always, so you got to be careful.
Yeah, so I like it as a skill testing mechanic. Then the Simic, they have Adapt. What is Adapt?
It's if you have played Theros, then you've heard the mechanic Monstrous. Adapt is very similar to Monstrous, where you'll have an adapt with a number and a mana cost. So for example, we can use Zagana to illustrate this. She's a 4-mana 4/4 with some abilities, but she has 4 and 2, a blue and a green to adapt 4. So if she has no counters on her, then you can pay 6 mana to put 4 counters on her. So it's a little different in Monstrous in the sense that if you somehow find a way to take the counters off of a creature, you can adapt them again. Or if counters are put on this creature through an external source, then you can no longer adapt them. So it's a little more give and take. But overall, it's very similar to Monstrous.
Yes, very much so. And some of them give you kind of a one-time effect, or it's supposed to be a one-time effect. You know, it cares about if a counter is put on it, and then you'll just get a bonus for when that happens.
Yeah.
But it is much more cheatable than Monstrous because you can put those counters on in other ways, and also it's more trackable than Monstrous. Like, you had to just kind of know whether something had used its Monstrous ability, and, you know, you could use like a token or something to define that it had happened, but it was not something that the game like naturally tracked in the way that just putting +1/+1 counters on something does.
Yeah, exactly. And also, it doesn't matter how many counters. So, like, if you just find a way to drop a single counter, you can trigger the thing's adaptability, which with cards that like Adonis Climb and like in Ixalan lead to some pretty powerful combinations.
Yep. So the Gruul, they are the most aggressive guild probably of all of them, and their ability, Riot, I think, just shows you how much that's true.
Yeah, Riot's very powerful. So for people who don't know, Riot's an ability. It's a lot simpler. There's no numbers going around. So if a creature, it's only for creatures, and if a creature has Riot, then when it enters the battlefield, you can choose for it to get a +1/+1 counter or haste. Your choice. So obviously very aggressive. So every creature with Riot that literally is better than haste. So obviously these creatures are going to be smacking you down pretty hard.
Yeah. So every single one of them has haste when it needs it, and if it doesn't, then it's just going to be huge. It will outclass your opponent's stuff.
Yeah. And the funny thing about Riot is when I first saw the mechanic, I was like, oh my god, this is going to be ridiculous. I'm going to play against like some Gruul deck where every single card in their deck has haste, and it's going to be really, really miserable to play against. But when the cards were actually spoiled, I'd say they did exercise some restraint when making their Riot cards. I disagree. You disagree. All right.
Because there is Riot on cards that are not creatures, and they grant Riot to things.
Like, there's Riot on non-creature. I know there's the Rhythm of the Wild, but is there a non-creature card with Riot on it?
I mean Rhythm of the Wild.
Oh, you mean okay? So we'll get to that. No, I think that card's very powerful. Yeah, Dominated too. Yeah, okay.
There's a couple of cards that give everything else Riot.
Yeah, they give other creatures Riot, but they don't have Riot themselves.
No, that's true.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. All right, yeah, no, we'll get to that then. I'd love to talk about that more once we go deeper into the Gruul.
Yes. And then Rakdos, last but not least, they have this mechanic called Spectacle, which is fitting, as we discussed earlier. What does Spectacle do?
Yeah, so Spectacle, it's an alternative casting cost to the normal spell. So obviously every spell has a casting cost. That's how Magic works. But if your opponent has lost life this turn, then your creature or your spell, it can be on anything, has an alternative cost, which is usually cheaper, but not always. But when you cast it for its spectacle cost, you're getting some sort of benefit. So usually that benefit is your spell costs less. Hooray! Like for a card like Acrobat, which is a 3-mana 2/3 that you can give it Death Toucher +2/-2 with like black and red respectively. But if you spectacle this turn, it costs 2 instead of 3. So obvious upside. But there's a few cards that if it's just like there's like this Rafter Demon, which actually costs 1 more if you spectacle it. But if you spectacle it, it makes them discard a card. So essentially, you want to deal damage to them, or make them lose life in some way, and then your cards become a lot better.
Yeah, so Rakdos basically has a strong benefit, strong incentive for being aggressive, though it doesn't necessarily care how that aggression happened. So if you ping your opponent for 1 off of just some little effect, that will trigger all of your spectacles from then on.
Yeah, I can think of one little effect like that we've probably got to talk about later. It's
yes.
Real good in Standard.
So let's start out with just some limited analysis, because I think that that's where most people will start working with these guilds. And I think one of the, we've mentioned kind of the aggressive and defensive ways to play each of these mechanics. Like Riot, it's very literal. Like cards with Riot, either they're aggressive, you're playing them with haste, or you're getting the +1/+1 counter, if you want to play more defensive. Mm-hmm. All of these guilds kind of have that. Azorius has this flying element, but also they've got addendum, so you can kind of make these controlling plays if you play them as an instant. You can also make this kind of play to the board sort of moves if you play things in the main phase. All of them kind of have a tempo element or a more controlling long game element. But I think one of the interesting things about how they've been designing the guilds in Return to Ravnica and Ravnica Allegiance is that all of the guilds tend to overlap in interesting ways with the other 2 guilds that share a color with them.
Oh, yeah.
So Rakdos and Gruul share red, and so they have some mechanical overlaps where there's synergies between them that would make you want to play 3 colors, and then Orzhov and Rakdos. So why don't we start there, because playing the 2-color decks, I think, is pretty straightforward. You grab the cards that are in the colors. You get some of the big benefits from getting to play the cards that are multicolored and have heavy color commitments. And they've continued the cycle of, CCDD cards that was started in the last set.
Some of them are a lot better than others, but generally they're all great and limited. They're all windmill slams.
Yeah, we're talking about the Crackling Drake cycle from the last set. It's been continued in this one, and if you're playing in 2 colors, snatch those up. They tend to be the best cards, the best uncommons in the color pair.
Absolutely.
But for 3 colors, I think that kind of shows you some of the themes, and especially if you're going to a pre-release, you might be forced to go into 3 colors just because of how your packs get open. So Mardu, which is red, white, black. What would you say is the overlap there?
I'd say, you have the Afterlife cards, so you have a lot of evasive spirits, and then you have spectacles. So clearly, or not clearly, but most likely what you want to do is you want to try and chip in with the spirits in order to enable your spectacle cards. So obviously, the one problem I have with Orzhov, just generally unlimited, is a lot of the Afterlife cards are just really good outside of your combination. So I feel like, at least in draft, obviously this isn't a thing in Seal because you open them up, just is that people in just any color combination with white or black are going to try and snatch up a lot of the Afterlife cards. So it makes it a little bit difficult. But I think if you're trying to be Mardu, you want to try and be somewhat aggressive. You want to be evasive. I think small flyers is probably the way you want to go, because then that just lets you enable the spectacle. It plays well with the Afterlife. It's also just small flyers are pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that there's actually 2 ways to play it. This is actually a guild combination where I think there are 2 approaches. You can go with the small flyers to trigger Spectacle. You also have a sacrifice sub-theme in both decks.
Oh, absolutely.
So there's cards like Fireblade Artist, which is a Rakdos card. It is 1 black, 1 red. For a 2/2 haste, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do so, Fireblade Artist deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker.
Powerful.
That card, it's powerful. It's a 2/2 with haste, so it's already above rate. But then if you're sacrificing afterlife creatures, you can, just with one afterlife creature, if you sack it and then sack the spirit it left behind, you're dealing 4 damage, 1/5 of your opponent's life just from having one afterlife creature and Fireblade Artist. So I think that there is that in Rakdos. You also have in Orzhov Pitiless Pontiff. Yep. 1 sacrifice another creature. Pitiless Pontiff gains Death Touch and Indestructible until end of turn. So that plays nice, obviously, with Afterlife cards. But Rakdos also has it gives you access to Active Treason.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's strong, yeah.
Gain control of target creature until end of turn, and tap that creature. It gains haste until end of turn. So you can steal your opponent's stuff and then sack it. There's also a Rakdos card that's kind of a Raise Dead, but it gives the thing haste. Where is it?
Oh, yeah, it's like Macabre Mockery.
Yeah, Macabre Mockery. It's 2 and...
Yeah,
2
generic. 2 red-black. Yeah, it's 4
and
mana.
then red-black. For an instant, put target creature card from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So you can just kind of grab stuff out of your opponent's graveyard, whack them with it, and then sack it for value.
Yeah. You just gotta be careful with sacrifice things because you're still, using card quality to get, especially with cards like Fireblade Artist. If you can actually kill them with the damage, that's great. But it's a very common pitfall, just start throwing creatures under the bus, and you run out of gas, and you can't actually win the game. So I just see that happen, kind of not that often, limit, but enough that I think it's enough. It's worth saying.
Yeah. So you definitely want to build. I'm saying this because it's synergistic.
Oh,
you don't want to just do this all the time.
Yeah,
but if you have the Mardu build that we're talking about, you kind of get the chip damage from the flyers that are being left behind. You have a lot of fodder for sacrificing, and I think that you end up with a pretty synergistic pile. So, Orzhov, Azorius, what do you think the overlap is there?
I just think being super grindy, they love Azorius and Orzhov really like grinding, and they have a lot of stupid things that just get in front. What's the card? It's the 3 mana Flash Arrest. I think that card's just absolutely amazing, and I can't believe they printed that at common. So also Final Payment, which is white and a black, so you can pay 5 life or sack a creature enchantment, and it destroys a creature. So you just have this really good removal, both at common within white, black, and white, blue. And you have all these afterlife creatures, which are really value-oriented. And you have these addendum instants and addendum cards that let you go long really well late. So I think you can just grind people really hard in the Esper color combination.
Yeah, the card you were talking about is Law Mage's Binding. Flash, and then its enchanted creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated, which is pretty savage.
Yeah, I saw that card, and I was like, wow, it just was in the best for the rest. It was just thrown in with the rest. I'm like, wow, this card's so powerful. I think it's the best white blue common in the set easily.
Yeah, and I think again, it's actually fortuitous because I actually think the overlap is a lot more about skies, about flying decks.
Oh yeah, I could totally see that too, but.
Because you get a lot of these flyers left over from the Orzhov cards dying from Afterlife. And in Azorius colors, there are 2 lords, Spirit of the Spires, one that gives other creatures you control with flying +0/+1. Mm-hmm. And then in blue, there's a card called, let me see what its name is, because it does the opposite. It gives +1/+0.
No, it's 4, that card's really strong too. It's the 4 mana
Windstorm
2/4.
Drake. Windstorm Drake, 5 mana for a flying 3/3 that other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0. So I think that black, like you said, it gives you this removal, but both of these colors tend to have an above average number of flyers, and there are kind of pseudo lords in the Azorius colors.
Yeah, I could totally see that, but yeah, I feel like you could almost those almost could go hand in hand, where you just have this grindy flyers deck that just draws a lot of cards and just tries to go late, and your removal's really strong.
Just lock down your opponent's only other flyer, and then go to town, get 1 or 2 blockers out of the way, just put them away.
I just can't imagine. Combat seems like it's going to be really tough with these afterlife creatures. How can you get past administrative obligation?
What is administrative obligation?
It's a 3 mana 2/1 with afterlife 2. So, small
savage.
creatures just aren't getting past that. I just don't see how. Or just the lifelink vampire, or the oligarchs, the 2 mana 2/1 with vigilance and afterlife 1. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe like the aggro usually finds a way, but these cards just seem super sticky and super hard to get rid of.
Yeah, thankfully they printed in red. There's a
the Magma Spray for 2 mana. Oh, the Chain Whirler. Yeah,
it has a Chain Whirler effect.
Yeah, that's
Dagger Caster. When it comes, it's a 3 in a red for a 2/3 that when it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and 1 damage to each creature your opponents control. So it just kind of, they gave red some ability to clear out all that garbage.
Exactly. Yeah, and also I don't know what it's called, but they printed Magma Spray at 2 mana too, so it just gets rid of a lot of those
Gates Ablaze.
Oh yeah, Gates Ablaze. Oh man, I really want the gate deck to work to get constructed, but that's a whole other can of worms.
And Flames of the Raise Boar.
Oh my god.
They printed an above average number of cards that just burn your opponent's entire board.
Yeah, and I think that's necessary. Not necessary, but I think that was rightfully so too.
Yes. So the overlap with Simic and Azorius, what do you think it is?
Simic and Azorius. So I think just actually, I need to think. I don't know. This one's a little bit tougher because you got the addendum and adapt don't really play too well hand in hand here.
Ooh, I think they do. So the reason the overlap there, I think, is that the adapt creatures basically incentivize you to leave your mana up because adapting is instant speed, and every card with addendum has flash.
Oh man!
So your opponent, once you play a card with adapt, you can just threaten that card being activated, as soon as you have that much mana. But so your opponent has no suspicion, no reason to think that you've got all these flash cards or counter spells or all this stuff that Azorius loves to do. And so you just get these attacks, these threatened attacks all the time, just threatening to pump up your creature, and you can choose not to and instead just use your flash mana or use your mana. You can use your mana efficiently regardless of what your opponent's doing, and you can kind of play reactively while still threatening your opponent.
Wow, yeah, that's a good point. That's it's not intuitive, but that makes sense. Like the classic settle the Wreckage Chemister's Insight thing in Standard, or it's like, are you going to attack me and run into settle, or are you just going to let me draw cards? So I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and Simic kind of gives the beef that Azorius lacks, so it can actually close the game out. It's kind of a tempo-y sort of thing that I see going on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always been worried about color combinations like Bant, though, because your removal, you have some good removal in white through the Azorius, but blue and green don't really give you the best removal, and I don't know if there's many fight effects. Green-Red's got plenty of fight, but I don't think they gave much fight to blue-green.
So in blue-green, they did actually.
They gave one. They gave one.
They gave a couple. So there's Applied Biomancy. Oh wait, no, this isn't a fight effect, but it's target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and bounce a creature. So it's choose one or both.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, that card. Yeah.
So that card's pretty good, but there's
more
also,
in the hard removal sense.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find it because they printed a fight card. I think it's in green. Let me try and find it. Biogenic. No, that's the
counters.
That's
one.
the pump. Sorry, I'm just.
Yeah, it's not good, dude.
This shouldn't. It's not Root Snare. Definitely not Root Snare.
Definitely not Root Snare.
Oh man, it's not Stony Strength. Oh, Titanic Brawl. That's it. This spell costs 1 less to cast if it targets a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it, and then target creature you control fights target creature you don't control, and it's an instant.
Yeah, it's a pit fight, except it costs less if it's a counter guy. All right, so they do get all right.
And it's an instant.
Yep. Oh, I guess that plays with the theme then. All right then. All right, I'll take back what I said then. But you still got. You gotta be careful with combinations like that because removal is still at a premium. Removal is great in limited.
Very much so. So the Gruul Simic overlap +1/+1 counters.
Oh yeah, this is an easy one. Yeah, Riot, adapt. Hey, look, counters.
Things have counters, and the big overlap here is not just that they have counters, but a bunch of the Simic cards have abilities that they communicate to every card that has a +1/+1 counter on it. So Skatewing Spy, for example, is 3 and a blue for a 2/3 with Adapt 2 for 6 mana, which is pretty heavy, but each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has flying. So it doesn't care where that counter came from. So if it's just a regular Riot creature, now all your Riot creatures have flying if you want them to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is pretty savage.
Yeah, and also the Riot creature is usually pretty big, so giving them flying is especially good, on top of the fact that giving creatures flying is already pretty normally good. And yeah, no, they just like also beef. I feel like that's just another good mechanic or a good overlap here. The Simic creatures and the Gruul creatures are generally pretty big. So
yeah, they're bigger than everything else by a pretty wide margin. So if you can just get them into play, they will generally dominate the board.
Not to mention, there's like a few cards in both Gruul and Simic, like the uncommons, where you have the Lizrog and the Bolrak Clan Crusher. So these are both cards you can use in this combination to remove counters from your guys, and then exploit value from doing so. So you have like this, which plays really well with Adapt, because then you can adapt again, or with Riot, because then you can just like take the counters off the Riot and use them somewhere else if the attack isn't looking too good.
Where's the Clan Crusher?
Oh, it's a 5-mana 4/4 that you can tap and remove a +1/+1 counter from a creature you control to deal 2 damage to any target. So it's 3 green-red. So it should be under multicolored if you're looking there.
Okay, 3 green-red.
Yeah. So
yes, that thing's really strong.
It is very strong. But yeah, no. So that's the thing. There's like in both Gruul and Simic, you have these ways of taking counters off your guys and making value. So it just plays even further into the theme.
Yeah. And I think they also both have fight cards at common. Yeah, Savage Smash. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. It fights target creature you don't control. So you've got fight effects, so you can take advantage of your giant, big-butted dudes.
Yeah, Red's got a plenty of removal this time around. You literally have like lightning or not. You have Skewer the Critics. Is like it's a Rakdos card, but everyone is gonna play it. So
yeah, and then the Rakdos Gruul overlap.
The Rakdos group, I think, just hitting them. Like Riot and Spectacle. Riot, you give them haste, you club them, and then you trigger your Spectacle, and everyone's happy.
Yeah, and there's also this odd, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, sub-theme as well.
Oh, yeah. No, I've been seeing that a little bit.
So I think that's the overlap there between those color combinations, because you get the Gruul big butts, and also because Rakdos is very aggressive, they tend to have cards that are slanted with higher power than toughness. And so you get a little bit of extra value if you're playing with Gruul or you're playing a little bit slanted in that direction. Like Undercity's Embrace, for example, is 2 and a black for instant. Target opponent sacrifices a creature. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you gain 4 life. Yeah, so it's fine without it.
I played my fair share of Foul Tongue Invocation. That's a powerful effect.
Yeah, totally. There's a good number of them, like even in black. Like clear the stage, target creature gets, so this is 5 and a black, target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you may return up to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So you get a Raise Dead and a removal spell as long as you're playing fatties.
Yeah, no, that's absurdly powerful if you can actually trigger it. It's a little, that makes a lot of sense. It's weird that they'd give that to Jund, but no, I totally did see that when we were going through, when we were going through the spoilers.
Yeah, I kept seeing it, and I'm like, why is that line of text was ferocious?
Yeah.
In
Teamer.
In Khans of Tarkir, and so I was like, why is ferocious back? And then I was just like, not understanding why it would be there. It's not keyworded. And then I was like, because there's an overlap, because these things are just giant dumb idiots.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it works mechanically. Just from a flavor sense, it's like, all right, whatever.
Why is this here and on multiple cards?
Yes, exactly.
But, look, I think that just kind of speaks to the design kind of keeping in mind that 3-color decks are going to be a thing. And then there's always the inevitable person who's just going to try and play Gates and go 5-color and, go with God.
Oh, dude. Gates was actually decent last set. Like, it was actually, like, what was that card called? The Guild Summit? That was a powerful card if you built around it.
Yes, it certainly was. So, just initial impression, what do you think in terms of limited? Which of these guilds do you think is going to play the strongest?
So I think Orzhov, it has a lot of good standalone cards, but overall, I think Simic is going to be really good. If you can splash for a little bit of removal, and because you have the really big beasts, and you just get a little. If you just get a little removal in there, then you have anything with mana sinks is very powerful and limited. And Simic's got many mana sinks in their adapt cards. So as long as you can just pick up enough removal, all the Simic cards are just very good on rate. So you have good creatures on rate, good removal, and then you're just going to kick butt. So
yeah, I kind of agree. I think Simic Simic seems head and shoulder. I don't know if it's head and shoulders better. I think every single guild looks playable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some of the Simic cards they are on curve or above curve already, and then they also have adapt.
And they're also common. Like
the card that jumped out to me is an uncommon Sharkto Crab.
Oh, that card's so good.
It jumped out on so many levels because it's 2 and a green and a blue for a fish octopus crab. That's a 4/4 with 2 green blue adapt 1, so it becomes a 5/5. And then whenever one or more +1/+1 counters are put on Sharkto Crab, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So if you can get a +1/+1 counter on this, it locks down a creature for a turn, and then it just murders your opponent because it's already a 4/4 for 4, which is above curve.
Yeah, like I remember it was like in one. I don't even remember what core set, but in a core set there was like Rumbling Bailoff. It was a 4/4 for 4, and that was a great card, absolutely awesome. So you really don't need anything more. But I was just saying about Orzhov earlier, is I was just a little bit sad, especially with them, is because they have like a lot of cards that are really good, but they don't force you to be Orzhov. So I feel like people are just gonna be picking them up in their like other combination, like in Azorius or in Rakdos, because they're just good cards. So I feel like it's gonna be a little bit diluted for them, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Afterlife is much better supplementing other builds. Yeah. I don't see Afterlife as being inherently synergistic that you would necessarily have to be black, white.
Yeah, and it's just not the same pitfall that a guild like Simic comes to because the counters theme or like putting counters on things, that's like, yeah, you have a little bit of that in Gruul, but that's pretty uniquely Simic. Like the +1/+1 counter payoff cards, you want to do that in Simic. That is where you want.
Yeah, they are. I think most of the payoffs are blue-green, and you don't really have much of a choice about it.
Exactly. Yeah, there's like the mono green. There's like, Trollbred Guardians, just only mono green that card, but it only gives you trample for its payoff. Obviously, the card's great on base rate, so it's fine. But yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think that you don't have anything like the Guild Mage that can move things around. The Lizrog, which is a pretty good payoff. Yeah. One thing that Growth Spiral being common. Yeah. I don't know what to make of that. So Growth Spiral, it's green and a blue for an instant that's draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield.
It's Explore.
Yeah, it's Explore, but at instant speed.
Exactly.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah, it is. It's very powerful. Like, I think it's one of the better Simic cards printed for Constructed, I think. I'm not sure if it's the best, but it's definitely up there. But for Limited, I think it's okay. Because, like, Ramp's always been, Limited land Ramp's always been kind of worse.
And it's conditional ramp. Like, you need to have a land in your hand for it to ramp you.
Exactly.
I think it's a little scary. I don't know.
It can be. It's going to, like, some of the crazier starts, you're going to lose to this card. Like, some of the more nutted Limited decks are going to have this, and they're going to, like, drop, like, a turn 4 or turn 3, like, Shark to Crab on you, and you're going to be like, oh, that's pretty metal, I guess. But
I guess we don't get to play a game.
Yeah, and especially
I guess I'm going to lose this one.
Especially Simic gets to abuse it, because, like, even your 2-drop, like, the 2-mana 2/2 that just for 6 mana you can adapt it for 4, like, okay, like, that's... Am I the only one who thinks that's just ridiculous that that's a 2-drop? Because like, if you remember from, like, Drags of Tarkir, there was the Crawl Guardian or whatever, that was a 2-mana 2/2 that you could pay 6 to give it +4/+4 until end of turn, and that was a really strong 2-drop. But this guy, you pay 6, and it just keeps the 4 counters forever.
Yeah, I mean, just in the last set, there was, Div Carton? There was a 2/2 for 2 that had 5. It gets +2/+2 until end of turn.
Yeah.
Something Dissident?
Yeah, something like, the Dissident. Or, that was from last set. And that card, while it wasn't amazing, it was all right. It was a fine
Exactly.
job.
And this is one more mana to just become a 6/6 forever.
It just turns into it's like a 2/2 that comes to play on turn 2. But hey, look, it's late game. It's a Colossal Dreadmaw. Oh, all right.
I just like that he's also a human lizard warrior.
You can't beat Lizard Wizard, but, like, Lizard Warrior's pretty good, too.
Yeah, I mean, there are just... Simic has always had the best type lines, but this set, they've taken it to the next level. There's frog lizards, you've got shark, fish, octopus, crab.
Got the elf ooze wizard, pretty classic one.
Crab, turtle, crocodile.
Yeah, jellyfish, hydra beast. Like, we could go on. Yeah. We could go on all day.
They did a great job.
Yeah.
So let's turn our eyes to Constructed. What cards jump out at you as some of the strongest?
So, like, this card's been talked about for a little bit, but I think it would just be criminal not to mention it because of how ridiculously powerful it is. Spawn of Mayhem. So it's a 4-mana 4/4 with flying and trample, but it has a spectacle cost of 1 and 2 black, so you pay it for 3. And at the beginning of your upkeep, Spawn of Mayhem deals 1 damage to each player, and if you have 10 or less life after this exchange, you put a +1/+1 counter on Spawn of Mayhem. Like, starting off, if you spectacle this thing, it's a 3-mana 4/4 with flying and trample, and you're playing it in an aggro deck, so the damage, the symmetrical damage, is most likely really good for you. And even if it's, like, not as good for you because you're at a low life total, it is good for you because it puts counters on itself. Like, if I'm at 10, I play this thing, this 3-drop, and then I untap and it hits my opponent for 6, like, with flying? I don't understand.
Yeah. And once it's in play, your spectacle costs are paid for.
Yeah, exactly. Forever. They're just like the 1 damage. Hey, everything's spectacle. Like, first main phase, good to go. Let's do it. Like, wow. Like, for standard at least, this guy's gonna make an archetype. This is gonna be. It's like 4/4s are also a really good place to be right now in standard, as Crackling Drake and Enigma Drake have shown us. So.
Yeah, I think that card is pushed. I think it's going to see a lot of play. I agree.
Absolutely.
1 card for me, Growth Chamber Guardian.
Yeah, yep.
I think it's also getting a lot of buzz, but it's 2, so 1 and a green for an Elf Crab Warrior. He's a 2/2, and he has 2 and a green adapt 2, so you can make him a 4/4. And then whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on Growth Chamber Guardian, you may search your library for a card named Growth Chamber Guardian, reveal it, and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So on turn 2, you play this thing. You can then attack on turn 3 and threaten to pump it and adapt it. If you do adapt it, you have a 4/4, and it replaces itself in your hand. So if they then deal with it from then on, you are paid off. You can just play another one and do it again, and play another one and do it again. And this thing is big enough that, it will rumble on the ground with much of anything. And you're paying nothing for this. It's a 2/2 for 2. It's completely fair, completely reasonable. But it's card advantage. You're putting cards in your hand, so maybe if you have a discard effect or something, if there's some reason you'd want to have extra cards in your hand, it can help you with that. But it can flood the board by itself. Like, you only need to see one of these to assemble a complete squad. It's kind of like Squadron Hawk, but if the Squadron Hawks were 4/4s.
Yeah, no, I think this card's even better when you, like, not using its adapt with counters. Like, I think just going turn 2 this guy, your turn 3 Adonis Climb, you put a counter on him, get another one, that's a deck. That'll probably be a deck.
Yeah, totally. I just think that it's, when you compare this to Thorn Lieutenant, which is a card that's seeing play right now, it's a 2/3 for 2 that you can pump in the late game, and it also gets you a 1/1 when it gets targeted by spells. I don't think there's much of a, like, the 3 toughness matters, but I don't think it's as good as getting another copy of Growth Chamber Guardian.
Yeah, I think the biggest test is this going to stand up to, like, the Merfolk Branchwalker Jade Light Ranger Explorer package, because that's kind of been, like, the green early game that's kind of dominated standard for the last few months. So if it can do that, then I think it's really got a good shot. But that's that's the hash mark you got.
I think it can totally beat out those cards, because while they're good, I think when compared with getting a body that's a legit threat, Branchwalker might be valuable, and just sometimes you draw an extra card that's totally good. But this card draws you an extra card too. It just draws you a good card itself.
The best card. Yeah, no, I agree. It's very, very powerful, very pushed card. Simic. It's going to be interesting to see what Simic does, because when you go to, like, in Limited, Simic's usually pretty simple. You play counters and, like, beat down with big creatures. But in Constructed, it's never so simple exactly what Simic is trying to do. Because, like, you have on one end, you have cards like this that want you to play, like, the counter Steve, which is similar to Limited. But on the other hand, you have cards like Frilled Mystic, which is like the Mystic Snake with the 3/2 for 4, which counters a spell, which is amazing. And you have, like, the Growth Spiral, which wants you to play kind of like a go big rampy deck with Hydroid Crisis, maybe. So it's like Simic has a lot of different ways it could go, and I'm not sure which one's the best.
Yeah, I think that there are multiple decks in each of these colors, even in Constructed, which is, they've done such a good job. So what's the next card you want to call out?
Oh, yeah, I think I gotta, like, do a shout-out to my homeboy Absorb. Like, this is a card that I've been like poring over and like thinking about in Standard and in Modern for that matter for like a really like for about as long as it's been spoiled, I guess, because it's just like so many people have been down on this card. I just don't understand why. Because you can break it down. At least this is how I broke it down when I was first thinking about it. Everyone, we can all agree.
It's counter target spell and gain 3 life.
Yeah, sorry.
Or blue, white.
Yeah, blue, white, counter spell, gain 3. For anyone who does not know. Yeah, so the card, when you break it down, we can break it down like this. So everyone knows Lightning Bolts is a very powerful card. 1 red, deal 3 to a thing. Very, very powerful. Lightning Helix is also a powerful card. It's less powerful than Lightning Bolt, but we can establish that tacking 1 white mana onto your very powerful spell makes it, and then gaining 3 life for that extra mana, still gives you a very powerful spell, which has very good applications, as we can see in Burn and Jeskai Control in Modern. And then now we can agree that Counterspell, blue, counter target spell, is an extremely powerful spell. Everyone knows that, legacy playable, obviously. So why is it tacking 1 white mana to counterspell and then gaining 3 life also not absurdly powerful?
Well, the reason is because counterspells get worse as the game, they don't necessarily get worse as the game goes on. They get worse the more time it takes for you to be able to cast them. You can't cast Absorb on turn 2, and Lightning Helix, while it is not, the gain 3 and the deal 3 is evergreen. And 2 mana, still, you're not at, diminishing returns. I think we've seen when they've made Lightning Helix effects 3 mana or 4 mana, it's not been good enough.
No, I agree. But that would be, similarly costing Absorb for 4, because we'd be taking the cancel, and then we'd sticking 1 more white on top of it. Because, then we'd be upgrading, a Lightning Strike to a Helix. Because you're right.
Cancel's not good enough.
You're right. Cancel's not good enough. But I think gaining 3 in a control deck, I'm gonna be I know there's a lot of haters for this card, and I understand where it's coming from. I'm not saying it's unwarranted. 3 mana for a counterspell, you have to compare it to Sinister Sabotage and stuff. But I think gaining 3 is absurdly powerful for control strategies, especially in the Esper control deck that I've been thinking about building with all the new cards we've been getting. And your mana base hurts you a lot, so you kind of need to gain that back somehow. And this is a pretty clean way to do so without having to sacrifice very much.
Yeah, I agree. I think Absorb of the counterspells, it's one of the most powerful. I think it and Sabotage are kind of fighting, and I think Ionize is still there for the more aggressive decks and the decks that are splashing. But I think that just 3 mana counterspells in the current day and age, I don't know how many you're going to want to play. And then once you're in the question of how many do I actually want to play, now it's a discussion. Which one do I want more? But Absorb, I think, is totally a reasonable card. I think it's going to see a lot of play. I think it's quite good. But I just see cards that make counterspells look silly, either because they come down too early and impact the game too much, like Growth Chamber Guardian, or they are cards that prevent your cards from being countered or are uncounterable themselves. And those cards just make me want to play removal and board wipes more than counterspells.
Yes.
Which I guess that means I should probably talk about the card that I've kind of been talking around there, which is Rhythm of the Wild.
Yes, Rhythm of the Wild. That should be a good one to play against for control players.
Yeah, so this card is messed up. It's 1 red-green for creature spells you control cannot be countered, and non-token creatures you control have Riot. So, in case you didn't know, Riot stacks. So if a creature already had Riot and it gets an additional copy of Riot, you can choose 2 different modes for each copy of Riot it has. So if, say, for example, you play Gruul Spellbreaker, which is a 3 mana 3/3 with Riot, and Trample, it's kind of crazy because it's like Xenagos' Reveler
It's so much better,
but so much better. Except you get the choice.
But it also is hexproof on your turn. What?
Yeah, it's messed up. But that card has Riot, so if you play it with a Rhythm of the Wilds into play, you can make it a 4/4 and give it haste. Or you can make it a 5/5, or you can give it double haste.
Probably don't do that last one. But
very few people will pick double haste, but those people will be champions.
Yeah, they will do it with conviction.
Yes. So Rhythm of the Wilds, if you resolve it on turn 3...
or
that's
turn
great.
2 with an
elf.
elf.
Or turn 2 with a Llanowar Elf. Then your opponent's counterspells will not work for the rest of the game unless they remove Rhythm of the Wild. And also, all of your creatures will have haste.
Yeah.
So against a control mage, just resolving Rhythm of the Wild is just such a beating. Like, even if your opponent manages to Kaya's Wrath, which I assume is a card you're going to mention.
Oh, yeah, no, I was going to go right there next. That card, yeah.
Even if they manage to destroy your board and kill all your things, you have probably whacked them for, like, 7 or 8 damage, and then they've tapped out for their Wrath effect, and you just drop another big dude who also has haste now.
And you I'm just happy they printed Mortify for us control mages. Like, we're not just stone dead to this kind of effect anymore.
Yes.
So, you know,
you have an answer.
We have hope. There is hope.
So why don't you explain Kaya's Wrath?
Kaya's Wrath. Oh, man. Like, it has a bunch of text on it, but, like, let's just boil it down to the important part. It's CMC. It's 4, and the first 3 words of the spell are destroy all creatures. No bullshit. Just kill them all. Like, okay, there's a little bit of BS, but it's white, white, black, black for what it's worth. So you're paying a cost in your color combination, but 4 mana board wipes are back. Oh, as a control mage, this makes me very, very happy. And it also makes it a lot easier to decide what kind of control deck we want to build, because Esper control, we get to Fairy, and we get a 4 mana board wipe. Easy peasy, let's do it.
And you also get to gain life for however many creatures of your own that you destroyed, which is... I don't know how relevant it will be for your purposes, but it sometimes will matter.
Yeah, no, it sometimes will. Like, usually, at least in control decks, like, there probably won't be too many the creatures in the main deck, but there could be some in the sideboard, and they could be afterlife creatures, so that could be relevant. You never know. But for what it's worth, I think its main use is going to be as a 4-mana board wipe in Standard. I just can't believe Wizards gave us a 4-mana board wipe in the same format as Teferi. That just blows my mind. Like, I know they gave lots of other nice stuff to the other guilds, but, like, seriously?
I don't know, because Gruul just seems so dang aggressive.
Yeah, no, Gruul's a problem. But...
And they punish you so hard for your desires to play these things.
I know. I'm just over here playing my Esper deck. I'm definitely gonna be playing Esper the whole season. I can't. There's no way you're gonna be able to pull me away from 4-mana board wipes for a long time. So, but
a card that I think is going to see play in every format is Cindervines.
Yeah.
It's 1 red, 1 green. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cindervines deals 1 damage to that player. And then you can pay 1, sacrifice Cindervines, destroy target artifact or enchantment, and it deals 2 damage to that permanent's controller. So the comparison here is Destructive Revelry, which has the same mana cost as Cindervines, but it just has the destroy deal 2 to the player effect. It doesn't have this passive, I'm just going to sit and play, and if my opponent's a control player, or if my opponent's playing an artifact deck, or a combo deck of some kind, I'm just pinging them for the trouble of them just trying to play their game.
Absolutely.
And then eventually, I will kill one of their things.
Yeah, and deal 2 more on top of that.
And deal 2 more.
Like,
and then kill them.
Yeah, I think that card might, like, I'm not sure if it's modern playable, but it's not off the table.
I think it replaces Destructive Revelry.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, too.
Just immediately.
I've talked to a couple of my friends who actually, like, main Modern Burn, and the Burn is their main deck in Modern, and they've, like, said that it's, like, 2 mana versus 3 mana, you know, because you're still, like, 3 mana for the Destructive Revelry effect or whatever, but you get a real benefit on top of that. So it's a give-take in Modern. I'm not sure.
I mean, it can kill them.
Yeah.
Like, it can kill them by itself. Like, if you just leave Cindervines in play. The thing is, with Destructive Revelry, like, one, you need to play it reactively. This you can play proactively. You can play it on turn 2 regardless of if they have a thing to target yet.
No, I totally agree. That's why I liked it. That's why I was of the camp that I thought it was good. But they weren't as enthusiastic about it. I think it's good enough, though.
Yeah, I think that thing's real good. Any other cards you want to shout out?
Besides,
I mean, there's the obvious ones. I mean, Bedevil's going to be very good.
Oh, yeah. Like, Bedevil's just, like, generic. Like, very, very clean, but obviously very, very powerful. So it'll see tons and tons of play. Oh, yeah. No, there's one card that I think really, well, I guess it's like 2 cards, but obviously you'll see the correlation once I say them. So we got, it's Hyler and Tower Defense. So for the longest time, we've had Arcades, the strategist, in Standard, and it's been like a meme, like, oh, look, we can play cards like that have Defender, and like it's kind of okay. In this deck, haha, so funny. But with Hyler and Tower Defense, I think there's a real chance this deck's going to be at like tier 2, or maybe even like top tier. I'm like not even kidding. I mean this in the most serious respect. Because Tower Defense is like the card that these...
What does it do?
Yes, it is a 2-mana instant. 1 and a green. Creatures you control get +0/+5 in reach until end of turn. So if you're playing Assault Formation, or a card like, well, not Assault Formation, but cards like Assault Formation, like High Alert or Arcades, it is 2 mana instant speed. Give your whole team +5/+5. That is ridiculous. That is like so crazily above the rate for effects like that. It's just not even comparable. So, and also there's like that new card. I don't know what it's called, but I know it's a 1 mana 0/3 with Defender that you can tap one creature you control as well as it to make a mana of any color. So you have those cards, and you play all these ridiculously like overstated butt creatures, and you have 8 butt things that makes your butt creatures actually hit them. And then you have a 2 mana Anthem that's +5/+5 that if you have like 2 creatures in play can just kill them. I think it could be a deck. Like
So that's Karuli Caretaker is the one you were...
Yes.
Ceruli
Caretaker. That is exactly the card I was talking
about. It's 1 for a 0/3, and then you can tap it and another creature to add 1 mana of any color.
Yeah, it also importantly has Defender for Arcades.
Yes. So the only reason I'm skeptical is because I tried to play Assault Formation back in Khans of Tarkir, or Dragons of Tarkir, which was 1 mana, does the same thing, like makes it so your defenders can attack, and it assigns damage equal to toughness instead of power. And I just remember the games where you don't see the thing that makes your defenders able to do things, in those games you just lose because you have a bunch of cards that do stone nothing. So having 8 copies is better, but I don't know if it's enough.
I'd argue a lot better, like a lot.
Oh, totally,
better.
Much better.
And 3 of them are, and 3 of them are enchantment based, which is hard to keep. Like 3 of them or 4 of them are creatures, and 4 of them are enchantments. So it's like your opponent has to diversify the removal to get them. But I really think this. I don't know if it's tier 1, probably not tier 1, but I think it's tiered, which is ridiculous for me to say. Like over here, like Mr. Spike saying that Assault Formation is going to break standard, but I think the card Tower Defense is the most powerful tool this deck has ever had access to, and the fact that you get to do it in Standard now, I think it could actually get there in a real way, which is still blows my mind. But
yep.
Here we are.
So the card that I want to shout out that I think is going to see a lot of play, and I think it has modern potential, is Rixmati Reveler.
Ah, yes.
So it is 1 and a red for a human shaman. That's a 2/2. And then it has Spectacle for 2 red black. When Rixmati Reveler enters the battlefield, discard a card, then draw a card. If its Spectacle cost was played, instead discard your hand, then draw 3 cards. So the reason why I think it's going to potentially see modern play is for decks that want to get their graveyard going, you've got cards like Tormenting Voice that you've had to play in the past, or Faithless Looting is always good. But the reason you couldn't play Tormenting Voice effects, or you usually don't, is because that card, if it gets countered, it's just, you're screwed.
Yeah, it's really
you discarded
bad.
a card for no value. A Rixmati Reveler gives you the effect you want from Tormenting Voice, which is the discard draw, but also gives you a 2/2. So instead of, you get to cycle your hand, as you do with most of these red discard draw effects, you get the filtering that you want. But instead of, taking on risk, you just get a benefit of a 2/2 body.
Oh, yeah. And even if, you can't trigger the Spectacle, if you have no cards in hand, it will just draw you 1 card. It will not, you can just play it, and it's a 2-mana Elvish Visionary, or a 2/2 Elvish Visionary.
Yeah, and then if you play the Spectacle cost, it is a Bedlam Reveler, which, nice shout-out with the name.
Yeah.
You just discard your hand, draw 3, which, again, if you have no hand, or you only have 1 card in your hand, it's basically an Ancestral Visions.
Yeah, no, it's very...
Ancestral Recall. In red.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the upside is just so high, and the baseline rate is just so reasonable that it's hard to imagine this not seeing play.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at cards like Viashino, at least in Standard, you look at cards like Viashino Pyromancer, and to see that the bar for creatures in red aggressive decks seeing play is pretty darn low. And this card, while yes, there is, you can talk about, why Viashino is a little bit better because it's a wizard and it immediately deals damage, but this card's very powerful, just in pure aggro. And, there's not really a clear, at least I don't see a clear home for it right now, but the power's there. You can definitely put it in many different places.
I mean, I see it, I've been playing Big Red a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm playing Direfleet Daredevil as a 2-drop of choice, on purpose.
Yep.
I'm playing this card that occasionally draws me a card from my opponent's graveyard that I may or may not be able to play. That's just a 2/2 first strike. Yeah, 2/1 first strike for 2.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. Like, it's not a bad card. But I would much rather have this with its upside of drawing me 3 cards in the late game, because that's a deck that has trouble getting card advantage.
Indeed. Yeah, totally. Like Red's, I wouldn't say Red's always struggled with that, because it definitely hasn't. But like Red, it doesn't get those kind of effects, especially Red-Black doesn't get that as much as like Blue would, or even Green. Like Green gets a lot of card draw for some reason. Can't figure that out.
Yeah. One last card I want to touch on before we go into our underrated and overrateds is Electro Dominance.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think this card's disgusting, and I don't know why it exists. So it's X red for an instant. Electro Dominance deals X damage to any target. You may cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So this already just on rate, it's Blaze plus an extra red. So Blaze is just X, X and a red, deal X damage. But it's instant speed. This card, that effect, has only been printed at instant speed for the same cost that Electro Dominance has, X red. So it is on rate for kind of instant speed, deal X effects. But instead of getting no benefit, you get a free spell of cost X or less.
And you get to say, what's timing?
Yeah, so there's a couple of tricky things here, right? Like you just said, when you cast this, that X spell that you get to cast for free is now instant speed, because you cast it on resolution of Electro Dominance. So as a kicker cost of like red to whatever spell you have in your hand, it's now instant speed. That is totally reasonable. And you've got a burn spell thrown on top of it.
Yeah, no, before they spoiled Kaya's Wrath, 'cause I know they spoiled this card before Kaya's Wrath, I was pretty excited to play Jeskai Control with Electro Dominance in it, and then just being able to like flash into Cleansing Nova to like build your own route, because instant speed board wipes are really powerful, and that's just scratching the surface with this card, the crazy stuff you can do with it, especially in Modern, like goodness gracious.
Oh, totally. And in Standard, while we're still there, we've got Wilderness Reclamation, which is 3 and a green, which at the beginning of your end step, untap all lands you control. So what you can do with this and Electro Dominance is on turn 4 or on turn 5, whenever you get this into play, or on turn 3, you can ramp it in with a Llanowar Elf or something. You can untap, then at your end step, tap all your mana, float it, then this effect resolves, and then tap all your mana again, so it effectively doubles your mana, but only for instants. And then Electro Dominance makes it so that everything's an instant. So you could just play whatever you want. So you get this gigantic X spell and whatever effect you want.
Yeah, no, I think Wilderness Reclamation is so weird, because like it's green, which is like the worst color for it to be, but the effect is so undeniably powerful.
Yeah, and I think that just the standout here is, like, for example, if you went turn 2 Growth Spiral, Llanowar Elf or something like that, turn 3 into Wilderness Reclamation, turn 4, float the mana. I guess you'd want it to be Growth Spiral. You've got
Growth Spiral would play very well in that strategy queue, which is also an instant, which plays really well with the whole untap your lands.
You've got 8 mana up, so that you can Electro Dominance, so you get a 6 damage and then also a 6 drop?
Yeah, it seems alright. I can think
Flash in Teferi?
I can think of an alright 6 drop. Niv Mizzet, perhaps.
Niv Mizzet? Like, there's all sorts of messed up things you can do on, like, turn 4, which, these are kind of ramp strategies that are super linear, so I don't know if it will work out that way all the time, but the power level is so absurdly high.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in Modern, like we've been saying, there are the 0-cost spells from Time Spiral. They are uncastable. You have to suspend them, except they have converted mana cost 0. So you can cast them if you use something like Electro Dominance. And I think that Ancestral Visions isn't good enough. 2 cards to draw 3 is not amazing for 2 mana.
It's kind of like Divination at that point, but... Well, I guess it's 2 mana Divination, so it's still bad.
It's not a bad fail state, and if you're getting a burn spell on top of it, if you're casting this for 3 and then still getting that, like bolting something and then drawing 3 cards for 5 mana is totally acceptable.
Yeah.
But if you play Balance, I think that's got potential.
Yeah. I think you also just throw in it with Aspertold, so you have that critical mass, and you can really start going in on it. I think it
like
could,
balance.
I don't know if that's tier, because Modern is such a powerful format. The bar for entry is so high. So I'm not, but it's definitely a thing you can do reasonably. So
yeah. So on the Pro Points podcast, Mike Sigris was talking about this card, and the setup that spoke to me was Electro Dominance with Wheel of Fate. So discard your hand, draw 7.
Yeah.
With Hollow 1 and Phoenix.
Oh my, that's going deep. That's going pretty deep.
It is. But if you just set that up, well, you've also got balance because you're discarding cards all the time. Like you can play that as well, or you can play Visions. Like you can get the other effects, or just Living End because you're discarding all these cards and putting them in your graveyard, and so you end up with this Wrath effect that also reanimates all your creatures. So there's options there. I think the Living End plus Wheel of Fate. But if you just Wheel of Fate with this thing and draw 7 cards, like the odds of you having one of your gigantic payoffs for discarding is just so high.
Absolutely. Also,
like you can pitch so many cards.
Yeah. Also, if you're trying to just ditch your Phoenixes, like casting the Electro Dominance into the Wheel of Fate, you're already 2 out of the 3 spells there. So you literally cast one more thing from your 7-card hand, and then all the Phoenixes you just discard come right back.
Gut shot. Boom.
Yep. Done.
Got there.
Got him. Yeah. No, I've that's happened plenty of times in Modern and me. But hey, I still play blue white, so it's fine.
Yeah. So I think Electro Dominance, it will either see like very little play in Standard, I don't know, or it's broken. But this card has probably the highest ceiling, I think, of any of these cards. It might just be completely just busto. So what do you have as your most overrated card?
My most overrated card. Oh, here it was.
Last time I think we did pretty well. Mission briefing.
Oh yeah, mission briefing. That was like, I remember we saw that. It's like, this is. I remember first seeing that card. I'm like, is this Snapcaster Mage? And I'm like, wait, no, this is absolutely not Snapcaster Mage. Not at all. Oh, shoot. Here, how about you start? Let me just give me 1 sec here.
Okay, so for most overrated for me, I mean, there's Lavinia, who I think is not that good.
I was thinking,
that one's not that good, but I think Tithe Taker. I think
no,
Tithe Taker can't be that bad.
No, that card's no.
I don't think it can be bad because it's just a 2-1 for 2. But I don't think that the actual tax is that hard on that one.
I think Tithe Taker's like actually the best white 2-drop now. Like honestly, like that card's great. But
Lavinia's just okay. Like there's not too many cards that I just look at their price and just go, why?
Yeah, no, there was one card I remember I had in mind when I was going through this. Here, let me see if I can find it.
Why don't I just make the argument on Lavinia? Because
here.
Did you see something?
I thought my most underrated card. Oh my god.
Okay, so Lavinia.
Yeah.
Lavinia's white and a blue for a 2/2. She has each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. And whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So she kind of deals with 2 different issues, but like not all the way.
Yeah, it's like none of them are really issues you see that often, you know?
Yeah, so in Standard, like maybe she'll stop you from playing a card for a spectacle cost. And she's a bear, she's a 2/2 for 2, but she's a little bit harder to cast than most 2/2s for 2. So all she does in Standard is occasionally stop you from casting things with like a Llanowar Elf ahead of schedule. But the thing is, she only stops non-creature spells from being ramped out. So your opponent can just go like, okay, that's cute. I'm just going to play my 4-drop creature that I was going to play. I'm going to play my Nullhide Ferox instead.
Oh yeah, okay, no, it's just not that. I don't really love Lavinia. Like people were talking about her in Humans, and I was just like, really? Is that really better than Meddling Mage? I don't know.
No, because I think that like free spells are not that prevalent. Like you stop someone from casting Gut Shot, I guess. You stop suspend spells.
It's like, wait a minute, they still got their Phoenixes back. Ooh, uh-oh.
Yeah, I mean, she does stop Amulet. But not from casting Titans. Like, she stops Amulet from casting things that aren't Titans. But that's the problem. Like, they kill you with Titans. So it just seems like a lot of the things that she stops, she only, like, splash damages a couple of decks, and she doesn't even deal with them all the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm totally with you. Lavinia's, I don't think it's going to see any play. But, yeah, no, here, I have a hot take for an overrated card that when I first saw this, at least, I was like, wow, this card's so good. But like the more you think about it, it's like, I don't know. It's just like it doesn't really clearly. So I'm talking the card Angel of Grace right here. So this is a hot take, right? Because when you see this card, like 5 mana, 5/4 flash flying, it keeps you from dying to damage the turn you cast it, and then you can exile it from your graveyard and make your life total 10. Like originally when I saw it, I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna play this in my control main deck. But then like the more you think about it, you're like, can this really compete with like the other creatures in Standard? Like a 5 mana, 5/4 flying flash, just not that good on rate. It's like yes, occasionally you'll be able to assault something, but it's just, I don't know.
I think that's totally good on rate.
Yeah.
For attacks and they're dead.
Yeah, like that's not like, are you playing it? But are you playing in a deck where you can attack them 4 times? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I'm not convinced.
I think you can run it out there. It will trade in combat or trade up in combat against most things that you're going to see, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It does protect you for a turn. So if nothing else, your opponent Banefires you for 10, and you play Angel of Grace and is like, that's cool, but I survive.
Yeah. No, I know it's still good. But
it gives you value from going to the graveyard. If you just discard it incidentally or if it gets killed, it gives you a second chance at life for at instant speed. So I think that Angel of Grace, I think it's good. I think that it's a little Archangel Avacyn-y.
Oh, it's not Archangel Avacyn. That's kind of what I think that's kind of part of my point. Like this card is not Archangel Avacyn was bananas.
I mean, it's got the same stats, like the lack of indestructible. Obviously, it's not as much of a blowout, and it doesn't flip like Avacyn did. Like it's not as good as Avacyn,
exactly,
but Avacyn was the best card in that format for a while.
Yeah, no, that was my point though. Like this card's like it'll see play. No, I know it will see play, but it's not as good as it seems. It's definitely.
Yeah, I could see that.
But
so what do you have for your most underrated?
Oh my god, I have actually 2 cards that have been on my mind for a while. One card that's like actually underrated, and one card that I hate is underrated. But I really do think it is underrated because I think we really knocked it out of the park with our underrateds last time with Niv Mizzet and Expansion Explosion. Those were those turned out to be pretty good.
Especially Niv Mizzet, goodness gracious! Like,
the 2 great tastes that go great together.
Yeah, they did go very well together, and also turns out red, 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 blue, blue, blue was not that hard to do. But
nope.
Like my underrated card that doesn't like get me very angry. I have one that makes me very angry, and then one that I'm like I think it's just normal underrated that I think is actually quite powerful and will see more play than people think it will. So the one that doesn't make me angry is Mesmerizing Vented. This card is a 5 mana 4/5. When it ETBs, you get 2 O2 illusion things that when they block, they lock down the guy that they're blocking, so it doesn't untap in their next tap step, and it's hexproof for as long as you control an illusion. This card is hard to get through. It is like it's hexproof. It's got it's like you have like a window to kill it, but it's hexproof. It blocks I think against like creature-based decks are gonna have control decks can bring this out of their sideboard against creature-based decks. And they're going to have a really tough time getting past it. And while it doesn't, just straight up stop a Carnage Tyrant, if you just throw, one of those stupid little O2s through it, you take 5 one turn, but then it's locked up the next turn. So it just buys you so much time. Like, this card, and even in the end of the day, if you can just sneak it through, it still has, Wizards doesn't really print hexproof on good creatures that often. Yes, there's Carnage Tyrant. That's the one big one. But besides that, they don't print hexproof on many very good rated creatures. And this is a creature with a good rate that kind of has hexproof. Not almost completely hexproof, but it's just I think it's just a very one of the strongest or stronger defensive tools we've had in a while.
Yeah, I think that it just shuts down all aggression immediately, except for flyers. So
yes.
It does leave you somewhat vulnerable to airborne attackers, but the turn it comes down, all ground combat will stop for a while.
Yeah, for a long while. And also, it just doesn't, and if you time it right, it just doesn't die to spot removal, which is great. You have so much time with it. This thing just looks like a big old time stick that can sometimes, it's like Ishkana. It's exactly like Ishkana.
That was my comparison for it.
No, except without the reach thing, which is real, but there's upside too. But yeah, no, this card is, I think this is almost exactly Ishkana. Lots of legs too, so it fits. 8 legs for spiders, 8 legs for octopi. It all adds up. Yeah,
and I do like as a 4/5, it rumbles. It
does.
Fights well.
It does. No, it's not like, it's obviously a little bit below rate, but it's a big body. It can fight.
Not in blue, it isn't.
Yeah, for blue, you're right. For blue, it isn't below rate. And actually, like, if you count the tokens, it's like a 4/9, which is absolutely not below rate.
Exactly. It's a 4/9 for 5 that has hexproof, and then if it blocks with the 0/2s, they lock your opponent's stuff down so they can't block your 4/5.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Even if it does die, you're still left with these like stupid little blue illusions that'll like keep your opponent's creatures down for at least 2 turns, if not longer. So no, I think this card's like, it's probably gonna, honestly, the funny thing is it's probably gonna see probably around the same amount of play as Angel of Grace, if I had to guess. It
might. I think that card's actually very good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think they're both powerful, but like one's being a little more exonerated than the other. The Benthid, I just haven't heard anyone talk about it. No one's said anything. And I think this card really has a place in Standard.
You said there was a second one?
Yeah, the second one that makes me very angry, but I absolutely think it's underrated. Rakdos the Showstopper. So, yeah, this guy makes me very angry that they printed it, because it's a coin flip card, which I'm okay with coin flip cards, don't get me wrong, but it's a powerful coin flip card. So there's going to be those games where your opponent like has a stupid Carnage Tyrant, and you're like, yo, I got this Rakdos the Showstopper.
What does he do?
So, okay, here. So he's a 6-mana 6/6 with flying and trample, and when he enters the battlefield, you flip a coin for each creature that isn't a demon, devil, or imp, and destroy each creature whose coin comes up tails. So this guy, essentially, if you build your deck around it, which just like either by playing demons like Doom Whisperer or just like not playing many other creatures on your side of the table, will on average, kill half of your opponent's stuff, which is pretty damn good. Because you compare it to a card like Ravenous Chupacabra, which kills one thing, which yes, it kills like the thing you want all the time, which is obviously upside. But this guy's a lot bigger, and he flies, and he blocks basically everything. So it's like for a mid-range threat, I think it's very like above the curve, very good. And it also gets around hexproof, which again against the aforementioned Carnage Tyrant is very nice. Yeah. But the fact that it's a coin flip card, like Magic has enough variance as it is. I feel like they printed this card because of Arena. They want some like crazy Hearthstone-y kind of effect for Magic on Arena, which makes me upset because one of the reasons I love Magic more than Hearthstone is it doesn't have this ridiculous RNG stuff that just like...
Though, I think Rakdos, this is the appropriate time to use it. It's not everywhere. It's on the biggest, splashiest Rakdos card.
Yeah, I know, but like I don't want to lose a match because my opponent flipped tails on my creature. It just leads to a kind of... No, it's flavor. It works so well flavorfully, and the card's very good, but... the fact that this is a coin flip card might see playing Standard. Also, you can like trigger judges pretty well with it. It's like, I'm going to flip this coin to determine the outcome of our match.
Yeah, I think at least they were merciful in that they didn't print a lot of imps and devils.
That's true.
And demons.
There
is that first card you mentioned, Spawn of Mayhem.
Oh yeah,
he's a demon.
Mayhem too. Oh man, yeah. Those will probably see play in the... the thing with Spawn Maze, I'm not sure if that'll see the same play as Rakdos, because Rakdos is a 6-drop, which is big for aggro.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll see play together all the time, but they can.
They can, and they work well together. I do think Doom Whisperer and Rakdos, though, I think those guys are like 2 peas in a pod. I think they work very well together.
Yeah, so they definitely have enough so that it's not inconsequential that he misses a certain number of things.
Yeah, not to mention, I think Jund might become the new mid-range deck of the format over Green-Black. Just like the tools you get, like Bedevil, and you get maybe I don't even think Domery, but just like having more access to more stuff. I think, and the mana is like not going to punish you as much to do so. So Green might not happen, but I think Green-Black might get replaced by Jund, and if that happens, this guy's probably going to see play in Jund, and then I'm going to have to deal with Rakdos. Maybe killing my board 1,000,000 times, or maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not a huge fan of the card.
So, for me, I think there's a couple cards. So, all of the split cards, I look at a bunch of them, and I don't know why we do this. Why did we do this last time with Expansion Explosion? Why do we do this with Finality? I think I called both of them out as
you absolutely did.
Ridiculous cards last time. Bedeck Bedazzle, right? This doesn't look very threatening. It's red, red-black hybrid. So Rakdos hybrid twice. So it's red or black, red or black. Target creature gets +3, -3 until end of turn. The other half, Bedazzle, is 4 black-red. For an instant, destroy target non-basic land. Bedazzle deals 2 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. So Bedeck is nameless inversion.
Yeah.
But now it's mono red, too. So one of the types of permanents that red has trouble dealing with is indestructible permanents. Indestructible creatures, because they can't be killed by red damage, and damage-based removal's all they got.
Yeah,
Not no more.
Cough, Adonto Vanguard.
Yes. Cough, Adonto Vanguard, a card that red has had trouble killing for a long time. Now it's got a 2-mana efficient way to kill it immediately. And Bedazzle, again, doesn't look like it's an incredible card. It's literally Molten Rain, but for twice the cost. But it's instant speed.
It's a big deal.
Which is a big deal, stapled onto an effect that you would just play. You don't care. So it is just a free roll of a Molten Rain at instant speed. And since it's instant speed, you don't even have to commit to doing it until, it's your opponent's end step.
Exactly. No, I think it's also the fact that these modes are good against very different decks. Like, Bedeck is very good against the aggressive decks, while Bedazzle is much better against the controlling decks. Leads you able to have the flexibility that's very necessary for mid-range decks nowadays. So
you can have an answer, a main deck answer to Search for Escanta.
Yep.
In red-black, which is the color combination. Like land destruction, you just can't play it main deck most of the time. It's just too inefficient. But now you can have a main deck answer to Search for Escanta, and your opponent, like if nothing else, blow up one of your opponent's dual lands because they'll be playing them, and then you just dome them for 2. Like it's just an efficient play.
Yeah, it's a lot better than having that like from last season, having that Abrade just rot in your hand, or that Seal Away, and literally any other 2-drop removal spell that you would play. So no, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Not to mention in those kind of decks, there's that. I know there was that for a while. There was that like Mardu land destruction deck that was going around that played that random thing that killed like 3, or was it the volley, or it's like from Dominaria.
Oh yes,
it's like haphazard bombardment. That one, and then you played Star of Extinction, and you played. I think there was a couple other good land destruction spells that deck played. And now you can put this in there as another just like incidental great land destruction spell on top of the and if you really want to go deep, there's that 4-mana destroy a land scry too. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying land destruction is playable. It's not what I'm saying. But
I think the other Rakdos one, Carnival Carnage.
Oh yeah, that one's
also really good.
Very powerful.
Red black for Carnival deals 1 damage to target creature or planeswalker and 1 damage to that permanent's controller. And then Carnage, 2 red black. Carnage deals 3 damage to target opponent. That player discards 2 cards. So the front half of it is, kill a 1 toughness creature, deal 1 to the opponent, which is totally reasonable. And then the back half is Skullcrap. Blightning.
Yeah, Blightning. For 1 extra.
For 1 extra mana. But Blightning was undercosted.
Blightning was really good. Well, then again, they had Bloodbraid out back then, so a little different. But no, I agree. It's another one of those cards.
But I still think it's undercosted.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Like, it's just another one of those cards that you have one mode that's really good against aggressive decks, and you have another mode that's really good against mid-range and controlling decks. So you have a very well-balanced, well-rounded card.
Yeah.
So,
Collision Colossus, like. All of these split cards are just so good.
Yeah, not to mention, if we're going through split cards, I feel like Warrant Warden deserves a shout-out, too. Like, Azorius Charm, this is not Azorius Charm, but it's a very powerful 2-drop removal spell that the blue-white decks have really needed, because Adonto Vanguard, which is the aforementioned, we've had a really hard time killing that card early, and this card gets rid of it for long enough that you can then get it with a Vraska's Contempt later. And then if you're playing against a control deck, and you rather than having like a useless Seal Away or whatever, you can make a 4/4, which is at least something. It does a thing.
Yeah, man, like all of them are just so good, and because the front half is hybrid on all of these, it means that your mana is just, you can make so many interesting splashes.
Yeah.
You can splash all these different cards if you just add like 1 or 2 cards of a splash color. Like, you could be a mono black deck and just play 1 red land, and you can get Bedeck. You could be functionally mono red and splash Collision, Bedeck, Carnival, Thrash, Threat. Like, you could get all of these if you were mono red.
Yeah, no,
and just get the front half of them.
You're right, because they're all like, at least for the rares, every single one of them is 2 hybrid of their guild combination. So you can, so they made it like that. They made it so you can be very weird, especially with the mana being so good already on top of that. So
yeah, and the back halves of them are all completely reasonable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think like you can have these splashes to get a completely extra effect, and some of them even feel like color bleeds.
Yeah, a little bit.
With your deck functionally being monocolored. So you're doing work with your mana, but the spells that you want to cast are fine. Like, you could play Chain Whirler and then still be casting Bedazzle very easily. You could very easily cast Chain Whirler and Bedazzle and Colossus and, and.
Speaking of split card of Chain Whirler, we finally think that, what is it? What's the card I'm trying to think of? Oh yeah, Status Statue Chain Whirler deck's gonna come together.
Oh, totally. I'm thinking of literally playing 5-color Big Red with splashes in all of the colors, a bunch of the split cards, and then you can get Chamber Guardian in there.
Oh man, I've never played that card constructed, but it was nuts and limited. I can tell you that.
You can get Chamber Guardian and actually get it back now. Like you can recur it. It's a pinger that can come down on turn 1 and it's totally fine. It can come down on turn 5 and it's also totally fine. Mm-hmm. But then you've also got access to land destruction. You've got access to discard. You've got access to pump spells. You've got access to fight. I don't know if you want all that access, but you've got access to all of it. And yes, my mana is, painful in some ways, and it might not work 100. I think it would work 100% of the time in terms of coming into play untapped.
Yeah, well, you can if you're just playing mono red, you just play all the shocks, but it might hurt a little bit.
It might hurt a little bit, but I just think even if you're playing all the shocks and you're playing all those duels and check lands, can't you even just play the hybrid? Can't you count on the hybrid side of the other cards too?
Yeah.
Depending on how much you splash?
Yeah.
Could I get an incubation in a deck that's mono red?
Incubation.
But splashing off of all of the other cards.
Oh, I get it. So you have, if you're playing mono red, but you have, Stomping Grounds and you have Steam Vents. Could you just play incubation? Jeez. I don't know how deep down the rabbit hole we can go, but it does lead to having this great mana and having these great split cards. It does lead to a lot of deck build lots of different deck build construction you can do, which is really good for standard. Because when you have 6 or a core of a deck that you just have to play or it's wrong, standard gets very stale.
Totally.
I can speak from experience from that. I can speak from a lot of experience.
Could I play Revival Revenge and have a 2-mana, revive my Goblin Chain Whirler that also occasionally doubles my life total and halves my opponents?
Yeah, I don't know.
In my mono red deck.
If you're going to play Revenge somewhere, I feel like it would be in the red deck, so I don't know.
Yeah, I just think that this format and this mana access and these split cards specifically, and all of these modal effects as well, I have not seen a standard format in all my years of playing where you can have the same 60 cards in your deck and your deck will play out in very different ways, and you can configure your deck in every color combination to face whatever you think your opponent might be doing, where the correct answer might not be change my deck entirely and change my colors. I could see picking a deck and then being able to configure it to keep up with the meta and be reasonable regardless of what my opponents are choosing, just by making a few card tweaks here and there, week in and week out.
This standard's great. No, I'm really excited. That's the kind of Magic I love doing, where you just tweak things a little bit, try and figure out what's going on, figure out and then after a few months, you just realize you have a completely different deck that's been tuned, and you're like, wow, look at what I've done. This is great.
Yeah, and it's not like it's been tuned and now the deck is correct.
No, exactly.
It's been tuned, and every week the tuning needs to change.
Exactly.
It gets out of tune, and you just need to keep doing it.
No, I know. It's like taking what we had in Guilds of Ravnica, because Guilds of Ravnica was so great and so dynamic, but I felt like the problem is you were constrained by the 5 guilds that we were given. So it's just okay, we have options, but really with only these now. within these like constraints. But now with all the 10 guilds being spoiled, our options just go right through the roof. We can do whatever the hell we want now. It's great.
Yeah. So I think with that in mind, I think that's going to be the end of our Ravnica Allegiance discussion.
Yeah.
This set looks really exciting. I think, again, Wizards has done a really good job keeping all of these guilds balanced, giving powerful options to all of the color combinations, and keeping it all in tune. Hopefully something very broken and very degenerate does not get found.
I really hope not.
To keep everything balanced, but
or if it does,
I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, if it does, let's just ban it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to.
Yeah,
just ban. I don't care.
The flavor text, man.
Oh,
the flavor text is even good. This
so
set.
On point. Like that crocodile. Oh man, and the Pegasus.
Yeah, what makes a frog lizard any worse than a bird horse?
I'm telling you, it's racist.
Prejudice against the Simic. That's what. It's unfair.
Like I was like, oh my god, it's so good. It's so good.
You two cover the alley. You two with me. Eyes on windows, balconies, and rooftops. Who knows what a fish, octopus, crab can do?
Wait, is that actually a flavor text?
Yeah, on Hazada Officer.
Oh my god, that's amazing. Oh wow.
I like that the different guilds are talking about each other.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good. Dude, this is great. They really had it out of the park because they could have easily, like, again, I'm a control aficionado, so I love when we get good control stuff, but they could have easily given us too many good control options, and then we'd all be, like, under the boot of Teferi for the next, like, 6 months. But I don't think they did that, so it's good.
Yeah. I actually, like I said, I think Teferi-based control decks are going to be put into a very awkward position because of Gruul.
Yeah, no, like, Spellbreaker, that card is so good. So ridiculously good.
Yeah. I think that this is hopefully going to be a very good format. Thank you, Play Design, for existing.
Oh, yeah, it's working.
Continuing to do your job. It turns out if you put pros into, your development situation and you run the cards against them first, maybe the game is less broken.
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk it?
Who would have thought? Get players to make game we play.
To play game extensively before it comes out to mass consumption. We'll see.
Yeah, like, it's worked so far, and I think it's going to work again. But, like, there's not, like, at the very least, there's nothing in this set that jumps out, oh no, this is broken. Everything's like, you look at it and you're like, oh, this could be good, and that's perfect. I love that.
Yeah, and there's some of them that you look at and you go, it's broken in Modern.
Yeah.
Which, that's fine. Like, a card we didn't even talk about at all that is a one-card combo is Prime Speaker Vannifar.
Oh, Vannifar in Modern. But, Modern kind of, I don't know.
Exactly, but that's totally fine.
Yeah,
it's Modern. Who cares?
I was going to say, it's going to take more than that to break Modern.
Yeah. I mean, it can totally be a broken turn 4 combo. There's a bunch of broken turn 4 combos. Who cares? Have fun.
Yeah, exactly. You signed up for Modern. You got to know what you're buying into.
Yep. All right, so I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, pleasure as always, man.
All right, so remember, if you want to get in touch with the show, do so at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast at gmail.com. That's the easiest way to reach us. Till next time, peace!